Hey guys, Bolt Spider here. Welcome back to another video. We are going to be taking a look at Mark Hollifield and his second place Swordsoul Tenyi list that he topped the Greenville, South Carolina regional, going 8-1 and taking second place. So let's get right into it. And what decided or what made you play Swordsoul Tenyi today?
All right, so the main reason why I decided to go with this deck is because it's one of the decks that I know fairly well. I probably know this deck better than any other deck, maybe except for one or two. And I'd been working on piling up and collecting all the cards for a good while now. And I noticed that Swordsoul has kind of fallen off as a whole in the current meta, and I guess I just wanted to show that it can still perform extremely well.
And outside of
So
that, uh who would you like to thank before we get into this deck profile?
I'd like to thank Smart Cards TCG. They helped me get a lot of the cards for this deck so I could participate in the tournament. This build center you see right here, it was made by them. It's metal and it has an NFC chip in that you can use to program all sorts of things to show up when you tap your phone to it. So you can pull up pictures, videos, deck lists, just about anything with it. And they're fairly cheap. I think they're about 20, 30 bucks maybe. And they are working on having more than just field centers right now. They are starting up, so any support they can get would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Now let's get to the deck profile and get your opinions and things that you would have changed in your list.
All right.
And first
So,
off,
all right. So,
let's
all
I
right.
saw the Moyes and let's get to
So,
that.
all right. So I'm gonna start off with the main basic Swordsol package. Three Sword Soul of Moye, pretty standard. She's your best normal summon. I'm sure everyone knows what she does, but I'll go ahead and say you reveal a worm or a Sword Soul monster in your hand to summon a Sword Soul token, which is your tuner to Synchro summon. And when she is Synchro summoned, when she is used for a Synchro material, you get to draw one card. So effectively, she's Sky Striker mobilized, engage, but on leg in a way.
Okay.
Next up, I've got Swordsoul Long Young. I use three of both of these. Long Young, you you discard another Swordsoul or Worm, special summon it in the token, and if he's used as secret material, you burn your opponent for 1,200 points of damage, which is always really nice to help push for game and help in time. Straight, fortunately, I never had to go into time, but the burn definitely helped me out plenty. Next up, I've got two Swordsoul Ataye. Your other level 4, I only run two of it because you'd much rather see Moye or Long Young, because this one requires you to have a Swordsoul or a Worm in the graveyard to banish to summon your token. And if it's sent to the graveyard, if it's used as Synchro material, you get to send a Swordsoul or a Worm from your deck to your graveyard, which synergizes really well with the Tenyi engine.
Have you considered
And then
dropping
last but not least for the Swordsoul, about what?
Sword Soul of Taya down to 1 like a lot of other people have?
I have looked at that, but having two really helps with the grind game because, like, a lot of times, if I had in a lot of my matches, if I only had one Sword Soul of Tai, I would have lost. So two is definitely correct here. At least that's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and then here, this is one of the ratios that will probably confuse a lot of people, but I only use two Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. Oh, I only use two Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous in my main deck. I have the third one sided, I don't have it with me right now because I had to borrow it from someone, but I do run 3 total, but I only main deck 2. Because when you're going into that first game, you don't know what you're up against, but you still want to be able to see her at least once, just in case like you're going second or you need the extender.
That's actually very interesting because I know a friend of mine, he tested 2 of it and he really liked it. And in my opinion, that's actually a
Yeah,
very good way of thinking about it. She's very a
yeah,
powerful card.
yeah. I would, yeah, I agree. But she doesn't. She gets bricky at 3,
Yes.
especially in game 1 when you really need to put yourself ahead. Yeah, I have not. I didn't break on her at the regionals, but I have bricked on her before when I was running 3 of her. And I gotta say, 2 is very comfortable in the main deck, and you can side in the third copy when you know you're going second, or you can side out 1 copy when you know you're going first for another side deck.
Okay. That
All
I
right,
could
so
definitely
that's it for
understand.
the sword. That's it for the Swordsoul stuff. Next up, I'll get to the Tenyi package. It's pretty small, but kind of standard. When I was making this deck, and I got past the Swordsoul stuff. Actually, this actually impacted the Swordsoul stuff too, because I started to take. You know how in the OCG when they deck build, primarily their cards are ran at 2.
Yes.
Well, that's what I took into account for this spin. I only run 2 Tenyi Spirit Bashuda, 2 Ashina, 2 Ottera, and the 1 of Shathana.
That's actually very
Like,
interesting.
so, yeah, like, I feel like this is a good sized Tenyi package. That way you're not, like, you do want to see Tenyis going second. And you definitely want to see Vishuda or Ashina going second. But, like, they're not always going to be unreachable because you do have Sword Soul Emergence as well as the Tenyi search cards to get to them. So they're never really completely out of reach. You'll
Okay.
always see at least a couple of Tenyi in your duels, no matter what, unless you bricked really bad. But at that point, I don't think a Tenyi is going to help you.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But yeah, yeah. Now this one right here, a lot of people don't play it, but I run it just because like it's a level 4 extender. So if you only have the Sword Soul token up, you can special summon it, whether it be by tone effect or by Ashina, and still get a synchro playoff because Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit is pretty popular. So Moye or Taye getting hit with Ghost Ogre, this allows you to play through that.
Also, I believe it helps with things like a rivalry of the warlords, or goes and match the one that
Yeah,
deals with the attribute.
yeah. Like with this card here, like everyone knows what these 3 do: bounce, special summon from deck, add a banished worm. This one, if your non-effect monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, target one of the monsters destroyed, special summon it, then you get to destroy a monster your opponent controls.
And also, that could be very
So it
useful.
basically, yeah, like the other, like one of the cards you run in here, Swordsol Blackout, synergizes very well with this.
Okay.
Yeah, like easy 3 card combo is Moye, Ashina, and Long Young to set up a really powerful board.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for the Tenyi monsters. Next up, this engine that I know some of the like you usually wouldn't see it in a sort in like a actual Sourceville Tenyi list. You probably see it in a pile deck or something. Is the Punk engine. For that, I just run 2 Noah Punk Z-Man, 1 Jaruri Punk Madam Spider, and 1 Noah Punk Foxy Tune. This engine has helped and won me games. It's helped me out a lot, and I rarely ever, and I maybe bricked on this engine once in the whole event. and it didn't even cost me the game.
So what made you decide to play the Punk Engine in Swordsoul?
All right, so one of the emergency teleport recently came to 3 on the ban list,
Okay.
and so I figured I would capitalize on that because emergency teleport allows you to start off this line of play without using your normal stuff. You can actually put up a means to stop Nibiru or token collector before you actually commit to your real play. And if your opponent does Nibiru you or hit you with token collector, or it can just bait out hand traps in general, Imperm, Veiler, Ogre, and you can just keep playing through it because, okay, cool, I still have my normal summon. I can still pop off. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, Noah Punk, Zia Man, you pay 600 life points and you add another punk card from your deck to your hand. Usually you'll add Foxy Tune. And Foxy Tune lets you send it from your hand or field to the graveyard to sit, and you send another card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon another punk, usually Jaruri Punk Madam Spider. Madam Spider allows you to pay 600 life points to add a punk trap card from your deck to your hand, and I do play one punk trap card in this list, just so that way, like, more trap cards means you are far less likely to die to Droplets and Dark Ruler No More and Chalice. Those cards are very popular right now. Droplets and Chalice definitely are. Dark Ruler No More, maybe not, but still, it can help give you a backup plan or just more disruption in general.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it for that. And yeah, I do run the Death Spot 001. I do run the House Auroradon package, but I don't use it in the way you think most people would. I do not have Mecha Phantom Beast Colt Wing in this deck because Auroradon's main function is either to put up an early disruption, help unbrick my hand, or to help me break a board going second. So yeah,
Interesting.
I want to be able to use those tokens for Synchros summons or to tribute for Auroradon's effect.
Okay.
And here are my hand traps. Now, this is another bit where I took inspiration from the OCG. I only used 2 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit and 2 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Like, the idea behind doing this is because both of these hand traps are very powerful, but at times I'd much rather see my Swordsoul, my Tenyis, my emergency teleport. But having these, I felt vulnerable without having both of these. So I decided to just go 2 and 2 to save deck space, and I'm basically running 4 hand traps here, and yeah,
That's
and
actually very
this
interesting.
helps a lot. Yeah, like the only other hand trap I would probably run would be Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, just because of how much it hits as well. Like all 3 of them hit the most popular engines right now. That being Fusion Destiny, uh, the Deaths via branded stuff, and the Adventurer package. Because all of this can hit Faithful Adventure, this can hit Enchantress and Adventure, and Ghost Spell can hit Enchantress and well, that's about it. And oh yeah, Ghost Spell can also hit the Rebellion, the branded in red, and this can hit the branded fusion too. I played maybe 3 Despia branded matches, and I didn't lose a single one of them.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, that's it for all the monsters in the main deck. Next up, I got my spells. Obviously, I run 3 Swordsoul Emergence, and then I run the 1 Swordsoul Sacred Summit.
Okay, very standard. And I know a lot of players cut the summit
Yeah.
for other cards.
Yeah, but having an N-archetype searchable monster reborn just felt too good. In fact, in one of my games, if I had searched this card but I didn't use it, if I hadn't used it, then I would have won the game. We wouldn't have even gone into game 3.
Okay.
Because I would have just brought my opponent was left with 2,600 life points at the start of their turn. If I had revived Vishuda and attacked with it directly, they would have been left with 1,200 life points. And I had one of the level 10 Swordsoul Synchro that burns on the field. So literally, I would have just burned them for game on their own turn.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, if you need to go in second, you could side it out, but I've never had a need to because it's good follow up and a good way to get to extenders.
Okay.
And we all know what's urgent. It's the Rhoda.
Yes.
All right, next, this was another thing that took inspiration from the OCG mindset. That's 2 Vessel of the Dragon cycle.
Okay.
In this list, I don't run the Heavenly Dragon Circle because I don't focus entirely on the Tenyi stuff. Like, if I was running a heavier Tenyi package, I would definitely run Heavenly Dragon Circle, but using 2 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, that was definitely felt like the right move. It lets you send a worm monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if you control a non-effect monster, which you should almost always have at least one of, then you get to add a Tenyi monster with a different name from the monster sent to the graveyard to your hand.
Okay. And it gets to your pieces faster,
Yeah,
which is
so
nice.
a great way to, yeah, and it also thins the deck out for you, making it less likely to draw into a Tenyi when you don't need to later on in the duel. And since the Tenyis can activate in the graveyard, you're basically adding more to your hand.
Okay.
All right. And for the more generic things, I do play 3 Forbidden Droplets, 3 Emergency Teleport. I main deck the Harpy's Feather Duster and 1 Called by the Grave. And that's it for like the rest of the spells of the deck. This is a 42 card deck in the main deck.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah, droplets and E-tail are pretty self-explanatory. Harpy's Feather Duster, I do not take this card. I almost never take this card out of my main deck just because, like as I said earlier, decks are playing good back row, good traps to help them avoid instantly losing to this card.
Yeah.
So this helps take care of that right there. Being able to get rid of Floodgate and extra disruptions, beautiful. And Call by the Grave, I don't even need to explain that one. If I need to explain it, then something's wrong. And then for the 2 traps, the one Swordsol Blackout and the one Jewelry Punk Dangerous Taboo. Blackout, we all know what it does. Target a worm monster you control, and 2 cards your opponent controls, destroy them. That works really well with Shathana, because if you target Wonka the Tenyi with this and Shathana's in your hand or graveyard, then this basically becomes a free pop 3.
Okay.
And then, like, if you need to, it can be follow up because if it's banished, you get to summon a Swordsoul token to your field. So, like, if you have this in graveyard and you have Taye, and you know your opponent has a negate like Impermanence or Valor or something like that, then you can just banish Blackout and make negating Taye pointless.
Yeah, and
Pretty much force them to save their disruption for a Boxia, because if they negate Taye, that's what's coming out. Boxia's coming.
yes.
And then I got Jewelry Punk Dangerous Taboo. This one's it's incredibly generic. You target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of the turn. This is what you search off Jewelry Punk Adam Spider. It does have an additional effect, but it never comes up. If you control a punk monster, you gain life points equal to the targeted monster's original attack point. That, as I said, that's never come up because you're almost always linking off the punks for help or using them to synchro summon into like Yazi or other synchros. But yeah, very good to have. It had. I wouldn't cut this for. I honestly would not cut this unless if and when Auroradon gets hit. And that's it for the main deck.
Okay, that's actually a very good main deck. I'm kind of surprised on some of the ratios, and also surprised on the Punk engine being in it, because you'd never expect to
Yeah.
see it.
As I said, the Punk engine are extenders to help you play past disruptions, force disruptions. Also, emergency teleport, even though it only ever happened once, you can turn E-Tele into a disruption just by summoning Ghost over to the field. But that never came up, but I mean, it was one event. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And I guess now for the extra deck, I do run 3 Monk of the Tenyi. Just I never really got into a super grindy game, but I have at least 2 is good. But I like running 3 just because it enables a much stronger grind game.
Okay, I could definitely understand that aspect.
Yeah, the one card in my extra deck I never actually went into, but I would also feel vulnerable without is Shaman of the Tenyi. It being a monster reborn for any of your worms at the cost of not being able to activate the effects of monsters special summon from the extra deck except for Tenyi monsters. Well, that might be a bit of a price. It on it honestly can be really good. Just to like it doesn't have it can bring back your synchros, so you can resurrect your Swordsol synchros. You can resurrect your Yang Zing synchros, and it always feels good to have another monster reborn that you almost always have access to.
Okay.
And then, as I said, I am Elk and Auroradon. Now, I'll explain what I'm doing with these. As I said, I do not run Coltwing in this deck. The reason why is because whenever I may go for Auroradon, I summon the 3 tokens and I have 001 on the field, I immediately use all 3 tokens and the death spot to go straight into Baron de Fleur. Just instant free Omni Negate. If my opponent didn't Nibiru me before, they're not gonna get to now. If my opponent didn't token collector me before, they don't get to now.
Yes, and especially upcoming Ingos from the
Yeah,
past
and
too, I could definitely see Auroradon going
yeah,
away.
you can see it doing what?
I could see it getting banned because it's not in the
Well,
set.
oh yeah, yeah. Auroradon on it. Hulk, Hulk is a fine card. It doesn't have a target on its back. Auroradon is the problem card of the combo because 3 free tokens, like as I said, being able to synchro immediately into a strong level 10 synchro like Baron de Fleur, or being able to synchro into Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing, and getting a pop with Yazi and a pop with Auroradon, as well as summoning Coltwing from the deck and just filling up your field. This is a card that would be hit, not Hulk.
Yeah.
And I'm getting sick of people saying otherwise. But yeah, that's it for the Link monsters. They're just there as a stepping stone and to help trigger the Tenyi's effects. Now for the Synchros. For the Synchros, I've got 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Shizhao. It's pretty standard in a regular Swordsoul list. If you Synchro summon, you can add to your hand or banish a Swordsoul card from your deck. And as a quick effect, you can banish a Swordsoul card or a Worm monster from your hand or graveyard to negate the effects of one other face-up monster on the field. Just a really good, strong Synchro monster to have. And it's good that they didn't make him generic. He does require a non-spinner War monster, so good on Konami for not making him generic. And then for the other 2, I do play Swordsol Sinister Sovereign, Xing Ying Long Young. This card has won me games. this is the new Swordsoul card that came out in Battle of Chaos. It requires a tuner and one or more non-tuner monster worms. And he has 3 different effects. The first one, if you synchro summon another worm monster while he's on the field, you get to draw a card. If your opponent special summons a monster, you get to banish that monster and burn them for 1,200 points of damage. And then, if the opponent activates a spell, trap card, or the effect of such card, then you get to immediately banish that card and hit them with another 1,200 points of damage. As I said in one of my matches, if I had remembered to Reborn Bashuda and attack per game, this would have won me the game right then and there. My opponent could not do anything without me messing them up. Uh-oh, my computer's about. Okay. Next up, I have Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Shang Ying. This card is the older one. It's the Ultra, level 10. For each banished card, he boosts himself by 100 attack points and weakens the opponent's monster by 100 attack and defense. And if he would be destroyed, you get to banish a card to protect him, any card. And if a card is banished, then you get to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard and from your opponent's field. You have to do both. They had to make it a little more restrictive like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So that was it for the Swordsoul Synchro monsters. There are only 3 of them, and you really just need 2 of Shi Zhao and 1 of the other 2. You'll never really make any of the more than 1 of the others. I mean, if you need to make it, then maybe. If you need it back, then maybe someone should be playing Sacred Summit. Anyway, all right. So next up, we got a few more cards left in the extra deck. I have 1 Yazi, Evil of the Yangzing, and 2 Boxia, Brightness of the Yangzing. In my opinion, these are some of the strongest going second cards in the game. Because Yazi is just so generic, and Boxia being not once per turn. So Yazi, he can't be targeted, and he doesn't require a worm monster to summon him to get his effects, and he doesn't even need to be synchro summoned to get his effect. So if you reborn it back with Summon or Shaman, then you can just use him again. And if he is destroyed, you get to special summon any worm from your graveyard, so you get destruction plus an extender. And then Boxia, being level 8, if you synchro summon him, you can shuffle back your opponent's cards up to the number of different attributes of the worm monsters used for a synchro summon. And since you have ways to get 2 attributes up, like using Swordsoul of Taiye and Tenyi Spirit Aura with either Ashina or Vishuda, then you'll almost always be able to spin back 2 cards. The rare exception being if you use Mogi token, or if you use a token with Shatana.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have cut down to 1 Boxia, but I've had the need for a second one come up more than a few times. So, and plus the extra deck space in this deck isn't exactly tight, so you can get away with running 2 fairly easily. And then for the last 2 cards, we have Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, another really good going second card, and also a really good disruption, especially with the popularity of Destroy Your Phoenix Enforcer and Wandering Griffin Rider. When your opponent activates a monster's effect, you can banish that monster right away. So if your opponent tries to use Destroy Your Phoenix Enforcer's effect on the field, you can banish it and permanently remove it, or if they try to use its effect in the graveyard, you can just banish it and get rid of it. And with Wandering Griffin Rider, because Griffin Rider has to shuffle itself into the deck to negate, if you change Reiko Berserker, then Griffin Rider does nothing. And then his other effect, if he destroys an effect monster in battle, he has, like, this is mandatory, he instantly gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack, and then gets to attack again. One thing that works out with that is like if you have Shang Ying up and there are a good number of banished cards, Shang Ying weakening the opponent's monsters, so like you can beat over something with like 3,000 attack or more, and then Draco Berserker basically doubles his own attack points and gets to attack again. And the last Synchro card, y'all should see it coming, Baron de Fleur. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's the most, this is easily the best Synchro monster ever made, being generic, an Omni Negate, a pop, and a monster reborn in the standby phase. Just,
it's one
you'd
of the,
be dumb not to play it,
it's
honestly.
one of the best cards
yeah,
in the
that's
game.
it. Yeah. Yeah, super generic, super free. I am glad that on the negate for Baron de Fleur, they made it to where you can only use it once while it's faced up on the field. So you don't just get a free Omni negate, a free pop every single turn.
And
I guess now it's time for the side deck.
of course, with the side deck, you mentioned that you sided the one Ecclesia.
Alright, so for the side deck, I already told you. Yeah, but I borrowed it, so I don't have it with me right now, but I do. But she is in the side deck. Like, if I know I'm going second, I can throw her in there. And because Ecclesia going second is basically an extra normal summon, effectively. It's an extra copy of all your Swordsoul cards and an extra normal summon going second, which is just absolutely beneficial. Now this card got limited a while ago. I believe it got limited when Orcus Harpor and Thunder Dragon Colossus and Mirage Stalio all got banned. Dino Wrestler Pankratops. In my opinion, this card feels mandatory to be running in any deck, whether it be the side or the main deck, with the one exception being Drytron, because unfortunately he can be normal summon set, and that would just drop the Drytron. But yeah, he's extremely good. And especially against like the adventure package, because as I said before, Griffin Rider needs to shuffle itself into the deck to resolve. So if they try to Griffin Rider, you can just chain Pink, pop the Griffin Rider, and get rid of it. And it being just a free, it can be a board breaker, it can be a disruption, it can be just about whatever. And then this card, it didn't come up, but it's just another one of those cards that I would feel vulnerable not having. Red Reboot. Another popular card that got limited at the same time as Pankratops. Basically, just turn off, put trap decks on have Solemn Judgment or a second Solemn Judgment if or they lose the game.
Okay.
I'd say these two are pretty standard. You'll find them in almost any. You'll find these two in just about every single deck, with the one exception, with like the exception for this one being decks that can't close out games real quick, and the exception for this one being Drytron. But yeah, they just feel they're so generic. They're staples. There's a reason why they're both limited. All right, next. This was one medical that I made. Instead of using Cosmic Cyclone, I ran 3 Twin Twister, just because looking at the deck, the deck does play with some of its cards in the graveyard. Like I said, with Taye and how Tenyis can function in the graveyard. So being able to discard one is usually free, and being able to destroy 2 spell or trap cards instead of just getting rid of one is just so much more beneficial, in my opinion. And surprisingly, I never got punished. I never ran into anyone using the artifact package while I was playing, so that's good. So it never backfired on me, and it also helps deal with the branded decks, the adventure stuff, cut off their follow up and whatnot. Now this is one of those cards I probably could have taken out and ran something else for, I do run 3 Artifact Lancia, but I never used it. Honestly, I would much rather have had Droll and Lockford in plenty of scenarios.
How did
Like, the idea behind it.
how did Lancia feel for you for the weekend?
What'd you say? It literally never. I literally never used it. It never came up. Droll and Lockford would have been 1,000 times more helpful. Like
Okay.
people, some people think that they'll go into like if you're like say Branded, you think they're going against um you think they're gonna make Fallen of Albus right away, send the Light Hex Steel Fusion and Albus to make Dragoon or make Mirror Jade. No, they don't do that. They always go for a Lubellium who shuffles back. So it would definitely be a lot better to use. I would have definitely preferred using Droll. Also, Lancia conflicts with all 3 of your Swordsoul Synchros. All 3 of these guys need to banish in order to get their effect. He has to banish to negate, he has to banish to burn, and he has to banish for both his removal effect and to protect himself. So yeah, they're I'm definitely gonna take Lancia out for Droll and Lockford since yeah.
Okay.
The only reason why I put it in there is like I didn't have the Drolls with me at the time, and I figured that it like Lancia's generic, but right now it just doesn't feel like it's doing much of anything.
Okay.
Like the only deck I'd probably use Lancia in right now is probably Drytron, just because you can search it with Ben 10. But anyway, so here is another card I used, Evenly Matched. I ran a playset of this and I used it plenty. Like just being able to force a negate or being able to permanently remove the opponent's cards. Because like who's gonna be able to recover face down banished cards, right?
Mm-hmm. Not a lot of
So
decks.
yeah, it helped me plenty being able to force down disruptions. Yeah. Yeah, like this helped me out so much. Yeah, like only decks running Necroface are gonna be able to put back face down banished cards, and tell me one competent deck that's running Necroface. All right, and this was one medical that absolutely won me a few matches. Instead of running Dimension Barrier like a lot of people did, this card is honestly 10 times better than Dimension Barrier. Anti-Spell Fragrance.
And want to explain why?
The idea behind it, yeah. All right, so the idea behind Anti-Spell Fragrance versus Dimension Barrier. Dimension Barrier is a one-turn stun of fusions, rituals, synchros, and exceeds. Whereas this right here, going first, you flip it up, you can potentially turn off half or all of your opponent's hand right away. You get it protects you against Dark Ruler no more. It turns off branded because they can't use branded fusion. They have to be running Verte to use it, and not many branded decks are using Verte. And it also stops the adventure package, which is very popular because it forces them to wait a turn to play Rite of Aramasir. The only card, like, I wish it could protect you against forbidden droplets, but it just never comes up. And considering that this deck, it's a monster focus, I've never seen somebody like think, oh, what if they have anti-spell fragrance? Maybe I should side in a Twin Twisters or a Cosmic Cyclone against Swordsoul. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, anti-spell just it as I said, it saved me in many duels against Prank Kids. It saved me against Branded. It even saved me against Sky Striker in one match. And yeah, yeah, people are playing Striker still. Big whoop. Oh, people are still horny for Ray.
Well, that has been the deck profile from Mark Hollifield from the South Carolina Greenfield Regional. Any other things you want to say before we end off today?
All I can really think to say is just check out Smart Cards TCG. Give some support to my friends working there, and yeah, don't be when you're building your deck. Don't be afraid to think outside the box, because more times than not, you'll catch your opponent off guard and they won't know what the heck to do, and that can win you games.
And outside of that, I've been Bolt Spider, and this has been Mark, and I'll see you guys in the next video.